Hello and welcome, I'm Pia and you're watching Gulf Today on NewsX World, and here are the headlines. Gaza's Civil Defense Ministry says that at least 50 people have been killed and dozens wounded in 3 Israeli airstrikes across the territory. Israel, meanwhile, has accused Hamas of attacking its troops in Gaza and violating the ceasefire, a charge that Hamas has denied. US President Donald Trump says that the ceasefire in Gaza remains intact, but has added that Israel should hit back if its soldiers are killed. He's emphasized that Israeli retaliation is justified following reported attacks on its troops in the territory. 2 alleged Russian mobsters face sentencing for plotting to kill Iranian-American journalist Masih Alinejad at her Brooklyn residence. Prosecutors have called the attempt chillingly near success and have sought lengthy prison terms, while defense lawyers push for shorter sentences. US President Donald Trump has met with his South Korean counterpart Lee Jae-myung, where President Lee presented Trump with a replica of an ancient golden crown. The symbolic gift was exchanged as the 2 leaders met at the Apex Summit. US President Donald Trump says that he cannot arrange a meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during his visit to South Korea. He has added that he knows that the North Korean leader very well, but the timing prevents a summit from happening. According to reports, Russian air defense systems have destroyed 100 Ukrainian drones overnight. No casualties or damage have been confirmed, but the intensity of military operations continues to escalate. At least 64 people, including 4 police officers, have been killed in Rio de Janeiro's deadliest police raid against the Red Command gang. Over 80 are arrested as fierce clashes have erupted, with gunfire, barricades and drone attacks reported. Hurricane Melissa has moved from Jamaica to Cuba. Over 735,000 people have been evacuated as the Category 4 storm has approached southeastern Cuba. US President Donald Trump says that nothing has jeopardized the ceasefire in Gaza, but he's insisted that Israel should hit back if its soldiers are killed. This comes after Israel launched new airstrikes accusing Hamas of attacking troops and violating the US brokered truce. Meanwhile, Gaza's Civil Defense Ministry has stated that Israeli airstrikes killed at least 50 people, hitting several areas of the Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered what he called powerful strikes earlier. Meanwhile, US Vice President Vance has stated that the ceasefire is still holding despite what he called little skirmishes. He has stated that Washington expects Israel to respond if its soldiers come under fire, but believes that US President Donald Trump's peace deal will endure. With us on the broadcast is Hamid Nadarian, a journalist and a Middle East affairs analyst, joining us from Tehran. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. There's been a lot that's been happening in the Middle East over the last couple of days. We've seen strikes, airstrikes, in fact, in the West Bank yesterday. Apart from that, we're seeing fresh airstrikes also take place in the Gaza Strip. The IDF claims that Hamas has violated the ceasefire by killing one of its personnel, a charge that Hamas has now denied. Fresh statements coming in from Donald Trump now claiming that the ceasefire has not been jeopardized, but if anything happens, the Israelis have a free hand. What do you make of what is transpiring in the Middle East as far as this delicate truce is concerned? Do you think it will still hold?
Hello, I hope you're well. And concerning what's been happening, especially the tumultuous situation in the Gaza Strip of especially Tuesday. You know, it's like Tuesday was, the things that happened on the ground were quite seismic. It's like, it was a historical ceasefire, not the entire ceasefire. It was a deal aimed at implementation of the first phase of Donald Trump's 20-point ceasefire plan, which was explained or described by some as revolutionary and unprecedented. And some even interpreted that as Trump's attempt at securing the Nobel Peace Prize, which actually did not happen. But anyways, it's like the deal was historic in many aspects, in the fact that the terms that Hamas agreed to implement were just so unique and so rare. It agreed to hand over the captives, whether living or deceased, and also it agreed to hand over Gaza's administration, which is a great deal. It's something which had not happened for decades. And I personally believe that after Israel's usual and ordinary way of manipulating the situation on the ground, Tel Aviv is actually doing something. It's actually, it may be what some may call a false flag attack. You see what I mean? It's like, doing something, planning an attack, and blaming it on, for example, someone else, like Hamas. For instance, there have been so many cases, like Hamas for itself says that it has had nothing to do with the incident, and it admits that there has been an incident in Rafah, where apparently Israeli forces have been attacked with RPGs and sniper fire. And it says it's got nothing to do with it. It says it's been an incident. So probably by acknowledging that it's been an incident, it means that it may be what Hamas calls Israeli-backed gangs. Do you see what I mean? There have been lots of militias there, associated with various families, like wayward members of various families inside Gaza, whom the families themselves have denounced and let's say have and also renounced. For example, Hamas is after these gangs, after these militants, and rounding them up. Israel is on the one hand condemning Hamas, and on the it's like it's finding fault with everything that Hamas does. For example, it says that Hamas is dilly-dallying, is delaying, is procrastinating in turning over the captives. You see what I mean? And Israel says, there's a lot of debris, there's a lot of destruction caused by the war. So how it is supposed to hand over all the deceased victims in time? It needs equipment. It needs, a lot of excavation, taking the debris out and retrieving the bodies. So it's not like, flick of a switch, just handing over the bodies. The bodies are not there for you to go and pick up. But I believe that, Israel is manipulating the situation.
The narrative is what is your assessment. At the same time, you've mentioned what's taking place within Gaza itself, the executions we've seen. But apart from that, Donald Trump has proposed a sort of international coalition in the interim to ensure that these strikes do not take place, executions don't take place on the ground as well. Reconstruction efforts are being monitored. This would include Arab countries such as Egypt, Qatar, UAE, Turkey as well. We've also recently seen a statement by the Israeli Defense Forces objecting to Turkish troops being posted on ground as part of this coalition. How do you read into this statement?
It's very delicate and volatile. The fact of the matter is that Hamas says whoever comes to rule Gaza has got to be Palestinian. There's got to be Palestinian administration, technocrats, yes. And it's like no foreign oversight, no foreign control. So it's a little delicate, and I believe it's said that whatever foreign force is supposed to be deployed inside Gaza has got to be deployed behind the so-called yellow line. So I believe that Hamas has, it's like come down a lot. It's like, back down from its once inviolate and entrenched principles so much. All that Israel has got to do is to prevent another earthquake from happening. Just seize the opportunity and let this this place, witness peace and calm once and for all. It's like it's a very, it's a historical moment. Israel has got to stop being, acting so stubborn, doing whatever it wants at whatever time that it wants, going wherever it wants, all guns blazing, and it's like turning on artillery and aerial fire and killing whoever it wants, and then asking the United States to support it, which it has always received in every form: military, political, diplomatic, intelligence. So I believe that if Israel actually cooperates just a little, probably things are going to change in the same way that they have been changing for, since early October. The agreement itself was so unique, so rare. I personally had not seen Hamas just backing down from its principles, or the things that it would not agree upon previously, so much. So it's a great deal. It's a great deal. And probably, if the issue of the occupation is addressed duly, and Hamas makes sure that Israel does not seek to occupy or reoccupy, so to speak, reoccupy Gaza, because Israel used to occupy Gaza and let go of it in 2005. If Hamas makes sure of that, probably some other things are going to happen. Unified Palestinian administrative body is going to come to rule, and probably Israel can get its guarantees, and the Palestinians can get their guarantees, and things can be resolved once and for all.
Indeed, I request you to stay on with us. You've, of course, pointed out the lobby, the Israeli lobby that operates in the United States of America. Meanwhile, on the ground, medics could be seen rushing bodies into hospitals in Khan Yunis and Gaza after Israel launched these airstrikes in the enclave. Now, Israel has accused Hamas of violating the ceasefire. Meanwhile, local health officials in Gaza have informed that at least 50 people have been killed. The Israeli military is not commenting yet, but we do know that Benjamin Netanyahu had ordered these attacks against what he called Hamas's violations. You can clearly see those visuals on your screens. Nearly 50 such people could be seen being carried by these ambulances into hospitals in Khan Yunis and Gaza City. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Hamid Nadarian. A lot that is being spoken about right now is post-war reconstruction in Gaza itself. A lot of Palestinians are worried at this time because their houses have been reduced to rubble. There were numerous hospitals that were bombed as well during the course of the last 2 years as the war protracted and continued. Access to medical supplies was limited too. What do you think needs to be done from a humanitarian standpoint, apart from the crossings being opened? What sort of international support should be provided to the people of Gaza?
The fact of the matter is that the largest part of the Gaza Strip has been reduced to rubble. And, the extent of the destruction, for example, if you search, just look up Gaza on Google, you see what I mean? The picture that comes up is the picture that belongs to, for example, 10 years ago, right? It looks like a sort of a decent place, lots of high rises, lots of infrastructure. But right now it's a picture of misery. There's nothing there. It's like, instead of, except, babies crying and the people starving. And the number of the aid trucks that have been coming in have been far less than the number that has been agreed. So what I think is that, for example, I think it's going to take generations for this coastal sliver to rebuild. And it's going to take monumental effort on the part of major international actors. Westerners, first and foremost, the United States, its European allies, especially Germany, given its technological advancement. If they can just remove the obstacles on the way of entry of reconstruction materials and equipment. It can happen, but it needs cooperation on every part. If Hamas violates the deal, it's got limited military equipment. You see what I mean? How many people can it potentially kill? How much destruction can it cause? But Israel, thanks unfortunately to the United States, is one of the biggest military industrial entities in the world right now. It's like, the United States has ratcheted up, has increased its annual support for Israel in, unprecedentedly. Like, 2/3 of Israel's military equipment comes from the United States. So I think the United States has got to revisit that. But first and foremost, I think the thing that could happen that could meaningfully change things on the ground is for the Israeli regime to decide once and for all whether it wants to go along with the so-called Greater Israel plan, its expansionism, its occupation, it's just going wherever it wants and doing whatever it wants at whatever time that it wants. If it decides against that, if it comes to terms, then it's going to happen. From what I've been witnessing for the past decades, it's been like something that has been happening, and the United States has been furnishing full support behind it, has been Israel's ambitions. Once both the regime and the United States decide against this routine courses of action, decide to change the pattern, things can happen. But at the same time, I strongly doubt it, because I believe that, for example, 50 people are, no little number. It's like 50 lives, and probably I believe 16 children. Once by the time that the death toll stood at 37, there were 16 children among them. You see what I mean? It's like blood follows blood. And Israel has got the means to just to inflict immense destruction and shed immense blood. You see what I mean? It's like it's the genocide machinery. The United Nations, all the international parties have verified this. It's a genocide apartheid machinery. It's got to change. It's got to change. And I don't know with the equipment and with the military industrial complex that Israel has, and with the all-out support, like unwavering support that the United States has been providing it with, I don't know, and I'm not sure, and I strongly doubt whether Israel is going to commit to this.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. Meanwhile, we're tracking news this time from Tel Aviv's Hostages Square. We're learning that Israelis gathered in the Hostages Square yesterday to pray for the return of the remaining deceased hostages held in Gaza. The event marked another emotional night in the city as families and supporters lit candles and held photographs of their loved ones that still remain unaccounted for. Now, among those present at the gathering was Bar Cooperstein, an Israeli hostage who was recently released by Hamas. He thanked the crowd for their support and invited them to join him in a mass prayer planned for later this week. Listen in.
באמת, אין לי מילים לתאר את כל האהבה ואת כל מה שאתם עושים בשבילי ובשביל כל שאר החטופים. זה פשוט מטורף. עם כל העניין של השיקום וזה, אמרתי, אני חייב להגיע לפה ולהגיד תודה ובאמת להעריך את כל מה שעשיתם בשבילי. אין מילים שיוצאות לי מהפה. גם כל מי שבא אליי ופוגש אותי אומר לי, גם לי אין מילים להגיד. זה פשוט לא יוצא, זה פשוט טירוף. אז חשוב לי להגיד שיש לנו עוד אחים שלנו שנמצאים שם בשבי, והם חייבים לצאת, ואני רוצה להזמין את כולם ביום שישי בשעה 10. אני רוצה לארגן הנחת תפילין המונית, שכולכם תניחו ביחד איתי, תגשימו את החלום שלי. החלום שלי היה זה להניח תפילין בשבי, ואנחנו נעשה את זה בשביל שחרור כל אחינו שנמצאים עדיין בשבי. תודה רבה לכולם.
Another speaker at the event was Orna Neutra, the mother of Omer Neutra, whose deceased body still remains in Gaza. Meanwhile, let's in fact listen into what she said.
זכינו לראות ולחבק חלק מהשבים מהמנהרות, וזו תחושת נס אמיתית. אבל במקביל נותרנו אנחנו בתוך חלום בלהות שנמשך כבר 753 ימים בלי נקודת סיום ברורה לעין. אנחנו נלחמים בכל מאודנו למען דבר שאף הורה לא אמור להיאבק עליו. ודאות המוות של בנינו עומר. זהו מאבק בלתי אפשרי. בורחים מהבשורה הקשה, ובו במידה גם נמשכים אליה. מפחד לדעת ומפחד לא לדעת. בין הידיעה המצמיתה שבמוות לבין החרדה מהיעדר הסגירה, כי בלי ודאות אין ריפוי, ובלי קבר אין התחלה של אבל.
This vigil comes amidst reports that Hamas is yet to release 13 bodies of Israeli hostages out of a total of 28 that were agreed to be returned in the first phase of the ceasefire plan itself. Shifting focus to more news coming in, two men who were convicted in a plot to assassinate Iranian-American journalist Masih Alinejad earlier this year are now facing sentencing in New York. The final sentencing is taking place at the Manhattan Federal Court. Now, prosecutors have stated that the plan to kill Alinejad at her Brooklyn residence had come alarmingly close to success, and that is why they're seeking a 55-year prison term for Rafat Amirov and Polat Omarov, both of whom are reportedly linked to the Russian mob. Amirov is an Iranian national, while Omarov comes from Georgia. They were found guilty in March earlier this year following a 2-week trial that included testimony from a hired gunman and from Alinejad herself. Additionally, prosecutors have claimed that the two men acted under the direction of Iranian officials who on an earlier occasion had offered a large sum for her assassination. It is important to note that Masih has been a long-term prominent critic of the regime in Tehran and is well known for leading campaigns urging women in Iran to defy mandatory head covering rules. With us on the broadcast is Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and the Vice Dean at Jindal Global Law School. Thank you so much for taking out time and joining us on the broadcast. Prosecutors are seeking a 55-year sentence. In your assessment in this particular case, is this proportional to what has finally transpired? Because the plot was nearly close to succeeding, but it did not succeed.
Well, exactly. It depends on the criminal procedure and criminal code of each state. And for that matter, the case for the prosecution is that the assassination plot came very close. She could have been killed and dead by now, which is effectively a murder case. And it's a deliberate, it's basically planned and executed assassination attempt. The fact that she didn't die is immaterial. It's the planning and the execution what matters. So that's the case for the prosecution. But on another hand, obviously, the defense lawyers will stress that the assassination didn't happen as such and will ask for more mitigated sentence. As I understand, for Umarov, it is the defense lawyers are trying to reduce the sentence to 13 years, and for the Omirov to 10 years. So it's curious to see. Actually, your question is very good, Pia, because this will it's a big discrepancy between what the prosecution asked, 55 years, and what the defense lawyers asked, 13 or 10 years. So it could be somewhere between in my guess here. It will be a long sentence, but I don't think the judges will go as far as to 55.
Indeed, and prosecutors have also claimed that both men acted under the direction of Iranian officials who allegedly offered a large sum of money. How do you think the court would then view this? Would it simply be criminal conspiracy, or would it be a conspiracy with a foreign state sponsor being factored?
Yes, you're absolutely right. There is basically an offer of $500,000 for assassination by the Iranian government. So the Iranian government is directly involved in here, although, of course, the prosecution is against the two individuals. Behind that stands the Iranian government, which ordered the killing itself because of the very prominent role which Madinat did. She's a very strong human rights campaigner, women's rights activist. She invited, in fact, many Iranian women to make selfie videos with their hairs, which is prohibited in Iran, and somehow to express protests against the very radical laws against women in Iran. So her campaign was successful over videos and over social media. And that's what infuriated the Iranian government. And that's why they issued that bounty on her assassination, which is quite significant. And those two mobsters, and there are very many gangsters, and like the two indicted and now to be sentenced assassins. Effectively, yes, this is a very interesting case exactly because behind this is a government that offers a lot of money, $500,000 for those two murderers to commit the crime. They couldn't succeed, fortunately. She is alive, as I said. But the prosecution goes on and they will demand, and that's probably, you are right, it could be seen as an aggravated circumstances here because she is a prominent human rights activist and the government is ordering her killing.
Indeed, and considering the fact that prosecutors are alleging that the two men followed orders from Iranian officials, from a legal standpoint, would this then mean that they were simply mitigating, as in following the orders that were given, or aggravating, thereby implying complicity if they are found guilty?
I will think the prosecution is arguing for aggravating circumstances, and effectively it further proves that here we have a conspiracy from a government, the Iranian government, which I wouldn't take as mitigating circumstances whatsoever. The only mitigating circumstances is the attempt was not successful, which is the defense case. Otherwise, the fact that an Iranian government is ordering the case is actually an aggravating circumstance because it clearly shows that behind that is political motivation, a large amount of money ordered, and the sentence should reflect all of this. It should send the message, the signal that this is absolutely unacceptable whatsoever. Governments should never do that. And this could be like a flagship case to indicate with the sentence. We still need to see what it will exactly be, but I expect a long sentence so that, the aggravations comes from the fact that this is an ordered by a foreign government assassination. So those two individuals have absolutely no excuse whatsoever here.
Indeed, and moving away from the legal standpoint towards the more ethical, more moral standpoint, Ms. Alinejad did in fact campaign for women's rights, championing women's issues, particularly in Iran, from the soil of the United States of America, and this attempt was made against her life. These two accused reportedly have ties to the Russian mob as well. And the US, as we know, is very big on free speech, free expression. What do you make of this fresh angle regarding the involvement of the Russian mob in this particular case?
Yes, well, the countries that violate human rights are those like Iran and Russia, whereas the opposite, the United States is a country of freedom of expression. And you're right that this kind of signals here that in some countries a behavior like what she did will be acceptable and purely normal. Freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of speech. These are very protected values and norms and rights in the democracies like United States and European countries and India and Japan and everywhere else. But in minority countries such as Iran and Russia, those are violated daily by the governments. And yes, it signals also that there are a lot of Russian mobs all over the world, and Russia is effectively sponsoring them. I wouldn't be surprised if the Russian government, and not only the Iranian government, is behind that, because one of the purposes of the Russian government is also constantly to inflict damage, to create chaos and disruption in Western democracies. And absolutely not surprising that the two accused are members of a Russian mob acting on the order of an Iranian government. So the message here is that, yes, states in the world and their law enforcement agencies should get united in information sharing, in intelligence sharing, and in protecting their citizens. And this Iranian activist is a citizen, global citizen, living in Brooklyn, in New York, but she should be protected, and everybody should be protected against such violations and attempts to kill them. So yes, very interesting case. You're absolutely right. Let's see what happens.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time sharing your analysis with us as far as this case is concerned. Meanwhile, we're shifting focus to what's happening in Syria. We're now learning that Syrian state media has reported that a series of security incidents, including a grenade blast and mortar fire, have struck coastal and southern regions of Syria. According to reports, an explosion has hit the Kneinis neighborhood in the coastal province of Latakia after an assailant threw a hand grenade near a police station. Authorities say that security forces have swiftly contained the situation, adding that there are no reported casualties. Meanwhile, the attacker has reportedly been captured, and authorities have opened an investigation into the attempted assault. Now, in the southern province of Sweda, armed groups have meanwhile fired mortar shells and machine guns at a security checkpoint in the village of Al Matona. While no casualties have been reported, the attack has heightened concerns over renewed instability in the province, which has witnessed sporadic armed clashes since July. Remember, earlier 2 people were killed and several others were wounded when a passenger bus came under gunfire from unknown assailants at a fuel station along the Damascus-Sweda highway. Well, viewers, that's a wrap on Gulf today. We will continue to track all of these stories very, very closely. Stay tuned on NewsX World.